Overall, what we're seeing now is the old system churning in circles, while behind the scenes there are very high level talks about a root and branch replacement of a lot of what's going on. So, for example, in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu is hiding in a bunker while military representatives are trying to prevent a Turkish and Iranian elimination of the Israeli state. And the condition has been the public removal of Netanyahu and not having him replaced with an avatar. In other words, he needs to go the same way George Bush Sr. went. That's what's going on now. The deadline is approaching, and they're going to have to get rid of him or lose Israel. There's no alternative, is from what I'm hearing from high level intelligence sources. At the same time, the Russian intelligence has informed me that a decision has been made to replace the very unpopular uh, Vladimir Zelensky of the Ukraine with the Ukrainian Interior Ministry, a man by the name of Arsen Avakov. So that's another one going. So Netanyahu and Zelensky are apparently out, but again, believe it when you see it. I'm talking, but this is what I'm hearing. Uh, Now, in the United States, too, obviously there's a lot going on. Now, I did take a look at the transcript of the interview or the conversation Trump had with Elon Musk that was supposedly viewed by 1 billion people. And here's my sort of executive summary of what they talked about. The first 20 minutes or so, he was talking about the assassination attempt or the Freemason theater that was, presented as an assassination attempt, whatever. Then he gets into more meat. He talks about immediately expelling the 20 million illegal immigrants who entered the country, and he points out that basically countries like Venezuela emptied their prisons and mental asylums and sent everybody into the U.S. So this is clearly some kind of Ordo Abcaio, situation where they're trying to create so much mayhem that people will accept the military solution, and that's what seems to be going on there. Now, the other thing that Trump talked about was drilling for more oil, which is probably needed, and cutting government spending. So all that was good, and of course he badmouthed Kamala Harris, which is easy to do. Uh, and the interview had some positive signs. The other things, of course, he was talking about eliminating the Ministry of Education, and Elon Musk talked about building, tunnels throughout the U.S. so you can have these super high-speed trains to connect everything. That's very interesting. That's the sort of thing that I support. And they covered a lot of things, but here's the point: is they missed a lot of very important topics. They didn't talk about the fact that the U.S. would have to declare bankruptcy. They didn't talk about the fact that the BRICS are going to announce a new currency to replace the U.S. dollar in October, and that the U.S. will have to come with a deal. You see, the United States is not in a position to solve its problems alone. It needs to make a deal with the rest of the world. And the only thing Trump had to say on that front was he was going to threaten World War III unless, the U.S. got some slack. Now, behind the scenes, I'm hearing that military intelligence and the Five Eyes will be doing something completely different. I'm assuming this will mean that the United States and Canada will be merged and a new capital will be built for the United States of North America. In other words, even Trump is talking about keeping the current situation going, but that's just not tenable. It can't be done. It has to be completely redone, and that is into the works. Now, the other thing I noticed is that Germany has arrested a Ukrainian diver charged with sabotaging the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. This is very interesting because it means Germany has publicly broken with the current regime in the United States. They are now saying, and Germany lost an awful lot of economic power and money because suddenly they were forced to buy very expensive Rockefeller gas from the United States to replace what was cut off from Russia. And Trump, in his interview, bragged about him being the one to shut down the Nord Stream. So what I'm saying is definitely there's been a break between Germany and the United States, and also, of course, the Austro-Hungarian Empire has been de facto resurrected as a military alliance, and they're also removing the illegal immigrants and allying with Germany. So we're seeing a fundamental geopolitical shift there that is not being reported. There's also been a lot of change in Japan. Japan was threatened with an earthquake weapon to attack the Nankai Trough, which is this deep fissure in the ocean along the coast of Japan. And a counter threat was made. If you do that, we'll do La Palma, and that kind of shut that whole situation down. Now, the highly unpopular Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has announced he's not going to run for re-election, and there's now going to be a war in Japan to make sure that the next prime minister is not just another Khazarian mafia puppet. So that battle is still ahead of us, but I know that something fundamental has changed in Japan and that it will not be business as usual. The Japanese government is already pointing out that the vaccines were toxic, and there are a lot of other things that are going to happen. Now, the Japanese and the North Koreans and the what I call the horse people, the descendants of the original nomads like the Mongols and the Manchus, are forming a military alliance, and they are willing to work with the Five Eyes to make sure that this does not become a one China world. So we do need to reach out to these people, and also to Russia. Otherwise, we're going to be completely controlled by China. The fact is that China has a much superior system of economic planning. Yes, there are problems. They have a real estate problem, and they maybe got some overcapacity. But the fact is, their economy is now de facto more than twice as large as the U.S. economy, and it's growing at a very fast rate, exponentially. So if we don't want to all end up working for the Chinese, we have to completely reboot our economic financial planning system, take it away from the messianic gangsters who now control it. And that is something that's also going to be up for debate. This is all going to come around October or before October, when the BRICS are going to have their big summit, and they're already talking about taking all the US dollars that are outside of the United States and converting them into a BRICS currency. So again, right now it looks like business as usual, but that's just because everything's in a holding pattern. For example, you have the WHO talking about monkeypox and how it's gonna, or they call it what, Mpox now, and how it means they're gonna have to have emergency powers. You know, they're just same old BS. Running in circles, and Anthony Fauci getting COVID for the God knows how many times, how many times now, third time or fourth time, despite 6 vaccines. I mean, it's all nonsense. So what we're seeing again, to me, it looks like the opera singers singing while the theater's on fire, and I don't think it will last much longer. In France too, I noticed that they were arresting Christians for riding around on a bus saying "Don't persecute Christians." They were illegally arrested by the police. They were stripped and put into jail, and then they were forced to release them after a day when it was proven they had no legal basis to do that. But this is a sort of last-minute fascist power grab we're seeing in France and also in England, where they're arresting people for spreading memes, but not for raping children. This is all a sign of a system in terminal decline. And like I said, I didn't go back to Canada this year because I knew they would be planning something in Japan, and and also it was time to keep fighting, and things are happening. But again, we're still in a holding period, but there are very high level negotiations taking place behind the scenes, and there will be stuff that is not going to be business as usual. This could be announced as early as September or as late as December, but whatever, it's not just going to be business as usual. That's what I can tell you. All right, well, that's what I have to say for myself today. Now I'd like to answer questions from readers and viewers.
Hi, Ben. We have our first question for today. If there is a black hat Donald Trump and a white hat Donald Trump both out there at the same time, peddling their conflicting agendas, how is it possible that they are not caught out being in two different locations at the same time? Also, what purpose would it serve the real Trump to allow this to continue? It seems almost impossible they wouldn't, given they're working for opposing teams. Are these teams, white hat versus black hat, in fact, coordinating their puppets with each other?
I think that if they could prevent the fake Trump from being put on screens, they would. They physically cannot. A recent example is we had a Donald Trump or a person claiming to be Donald Trump in Dallas, Texas, being booed by an audience after bragging about vaccines. So this is clearly not what the real Trump would say. But obviously there is a fight between a group around the Rockefellers who still control, I guess, Meta and Google and MSNBC and are putting out, Kamala propaganda. And then you have a group around Trump with the, I think, the white hat military who are presenting a counter image. But clearly, they're unable to stop a fake Trump from being put on the media at this point. This is what the facts show on the ground. So the fight is not over yet, but it will be soon. Next question.
Hi, Ben. Over the years, every once in a while, you have posted a Simpsons prediction, and it has always perplexed me as to how these seems to be so accurate. Where do you think they are getting this information for these prophecies?
All I know is that they are connected to intelligence agency white hats. I'm assuming it's the NSA, and that they're being used as a way of warning people. They contact me indirectly via a white hat CIA guy I work with, and they seem to be good people who are trying to warn us and trying to do their bit to prevent what's being planned for us. So, this predictive programming is basically, it's leaking stuff that these people have been planning for decades. They have plans for our future that go back decades. Like the COVID thing started in 1975. And clearly there are white hats who are trying to warn us about their plans, and they're using The Simpsons. I'll try to reach out and find out more, but obviously these people don't want to be exposed and killed, so they need to keep their secrecy. But I'll try to get more on that. Next question.
Hi, Ben. There's been a lot of controversy in regards to the Olympic opening ceremony that seems to parody the Last Supper of Christ with trans individuals, and then again, doubling down with a closing ceremony seeming to depict with portals and horsemen the coming of the Antichrist. I know you've touched a bit on this in your reports, but do you believe this was some sort of satanic ritual to move forward the end times?
Yes, I do. I think they're showing the world what their plans are. If you remember in the 2012 Olympic ceremonies, they had all these nurses with vaccines and hospital beds dancing around. So they're mocking us, but clearly these people are still planning some kind of horrific mayhem, which is why we need to take action. And it has to be military action, and it has to be real action to prevent this and put an end to this sick future planning controlled by satanic people with a death wish for the planet. They should not be in charge, and we need to eliminate them, and that will happen. I'll fight to the death if necessary, and we must all, because they are trying to kill us and our families, and we must not let them. But we need to be aware. They plan decades in advance, and it's not going to be easy. But the key is to go after the owners of the transnational corporations. That's the source of the problem. Next question.
Hi, Ben. I can see how rubber mask technology is now refined enough to pull off impersonations, even close ups. But how about the voices? Voices are unique and unmistakable, like fingerprints, Trump's voice, like no other. How could any actor create his particular set of resonances? Ditto with all the other impersonating actors, such as Kamala, Obama. An actor can mimic a style of speaking, vocabulary, gestures, tone, etc., but their voice will be their own.
Not if you're watching it on a screen. If you're watching it on a screen, then they can change the voice to make it sound like whoever. Uh, Now, I would appreciate feedback from anybody who has a chance to physically and in person go to a live event featuring such people as Kamala Harris and Donald Trump and report back on what they hear. But if it's on a screen nowadays, it can be faked and in ways you won't be able to detect. That's the reality. Next question.
Hi, Ben. We have our last question for today. Is the book, The Committee of 300 by John Coleman, a valid resource that lays out the playbook being used by the deep state? It lists all of the ways somebody has intended to use, including the pandemics, to tear the country apart. If it is valid, then why do people not recognize the pummeling of Donald Trump is not because he's the bad actor, quasi politician, but because he threatens years and years of plans they've made?
I think the Committee of 300 book, which was written by the former head of the CIA using the pen name of Coleman and who was later killed for his efforts, represents a study of the Committee of 300, which is a major faction in the Khazarian Mafia, but it's not the only faction. And my understanding is that the Committee of 300 under Queen Elizabeth were the ones behind the global warming hoax, which, even though it was fraudulent, was a plan to save the environment without killing 90% of humanity. And they were opposed by the George Bush Sr. group, who were planning to kill 90% of humanity. And they got George Bush Sr. Killed. But now what's happening is the rest of the world is saying global warming is not going to replace the infinite war on terror and the killing of 90% of humanity, because it's also based on a fraud. So this group has been working as a lesser evil, but now the world wants something different, and that's what's being worked on. Donald Trump, the real one, who's at the military base in Mount Cheyenne in Colorado, should help accomplish that. But I don't trust the ones you're seeing in the media, because there's too many contradictions and holes in what they're saying. And like I say, there appear to be at least two different Donald Trumps appearing on our screen. So it's a very confusing situation. But what we do know is that the top of the Anglo-Saxon Five Eyes are trying behind the scenes to reach a deal with the BRICS nations to come up with some entirely new paradigm for the planet. In the meantime, Trump represents the best hope for the people of the United States, but I don't think he's going to be able to provide all the answers. It's going to take something bigger than that. Okay, well, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you again next week. And we should know more about Netanyahu by then and Zelensky.